that if the stupidity is such that there's Y's and arrows and X's and whatever, why isn't it that we can put it in a machine, and if the machine can't read what somebody is trying to vote for, I personally don't care if they're disfranchised or not, and most of the people that I talk to don't really care, because if you're educated and you can't fill an oval in, it's something that for 50 years did it, I think, a long time ago anyway, for Iowa tests and whatever.
On what kinds of issues was there not consensus?
Lizard people. Was lizard people a legitimate name of a person? Some of the voters had names like muskrat. Some voters had names like, one of them's name was gopher. So was lizard people the name of a person and therefore a legitimate name to use for a write-in? Or was it a kind of a joke that was just used to be funny in a ballot sort of way? And we had differences of opinion on this point.
And what about decisions other than on ballots? What would have characterized a disagreement among the members of the candidacy?
I'm not thinking or coming up with any other disagreements, but there were two questions on the ballots: intent of the voter and identifying marks. And what we did was to develop very quickly our sort of pattern of decision about a particular mark or particular item. Actually, Chief Justice Magnuson had a little hieroglyphics chart that he kept. And our focus was on pattern, and then precedent, and then consistency.
Why is it that we should have 5 people sitting around if the stupidity is such that there's Y's and arrows and X's and whatever, why isn't it that we can put it in a machine, and if the machine can't read what somebody is trying to vote for, I personally don't care if they're disfranchised or not, and most of the people that I talk to don't really care, because if you're educated and you can't fill an oval in, it's something that for 50 years did it, I think, a long time ago anyway, for Iowa tests and whatever, that people have to sit around the table and figure out what people are actually thinking, how they're voting. Would it be better, now this is where I'm trying to ask the question to see if we can resolve something. Would it be better that if you cannot, if some machine can't read it, that's it. We just don't sit around and spend and go through 5,000 or 10,000 ballots that somebody might want to voted for somebody, or they didn't want to, or they had arrows, or they wrote in wrong names, or whatever. I don't even know. That seems to me just to be a huge waste of time. So explain to me where I'm wrong here on that.
Mr. Secretary?
Madam Chair, Senator Dave, the founders of our nation and the writers of the Minnesota Constitution did not require that the citizens only be able to vote if they can comply with the demands of the machine manufacturers. My grandmother, sharp as a tack until the day she died, shook. She could not fill in a circle. So if the proposal is that if you can't comply with the conditions of the manufacturer of machines, wonderful machines that give us great accuracy and great, very timely results in most respect, then you don't get to vote, then that's a dramatic change from the founders of the nation and the writers of the Minnesota Constitution. It is a proposal that I've heard from many people who've been disparaging if you cannot fill in a circle. That breaks my heart when I think about my grandmother, and that somebody is saying she should not be allowed to vote because the machine manufactured by a company in Taiwan cannot read her vote.
Senator Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Ritchie, one of the things that people have expressed concern to me about is the fact that we were recounting the ballots from election night, but there was a group in Minneapolis of 133 ballots where there were no ballots to count in the recount. And to many people, that seems very inconsistent, that if you're going to do a recount of ballots, that you have to have the ballots. Otherwise, if you're going to take the election night results, why are you doing a recount? And I still am very puzzled by what happened there and how ballots that were supposed to be secured vanished, and how it was decided that those ballots that weren't there would be counted from the election night results. And I think it leaves a lot of questions in people's minds about the whole process and the validity of it when things like that happen.
In the 3 billion ballots, one packet of ballots was missing. It was gone from election night. People searched for it. And 4 judges and justices went through every lick of legal history in the state, all Supreme Court rulings, all court rulings, all law. And they said out loud, and we all agreed 5-0, that in a case like that, the case law in Minnesota and the Supreme Court rulings have been consistent that the machine total is the second best, and it is the evidence you use in the case when there is a missing packet of ballots, as there was in this case. The other thing that was important about that particular question was that the number of people who signed in to vote was the same as the number of ballots indicated by the machine total, and so that was a further kind of reinforcement of that previous juridical decision. But we were in unanimous agreement that that's what the state law and the Supreme Court rulings of the past 150 years required, and we took that action unanimously.
Madam Chair, it is still a mystery as to what would have happened to the ballots that were supposed to be secured there. And it always raises a question in people's minds, I think.
Madam Chair, Central Oakland, it's a disappointment to lose one packet in 3 million. It's always a disappointment.